Folks, with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, Tacitus Today, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the situation with activist lawyers and activist law studies that are churning out activist lawyers by the gazillion all across the Western world. Wherever the globalists are in control, activist lawyers are everywhere you look. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I wasn't going to do this bit, but one of the appointments, one of the online meetings that I had has postponed it till later this afternoon. So you get the benefit of another video from your Tacitus Today correspondent here. So let's just have a look at this. I've noticed that the law schools have even upped the ante further than they even were before, and I thought it was bad enough previously. But in effect, the studies, the law studies, are to be fully infected with globalist race, gender, climate change type hustling and grifting, and this is, they say, to make it more inclusive. And if you don't agree with it, then they'll make sure you're not included. So being inclusive seems to depend very heavily on your point of view. So if you don't have the right attitude, the right point of view, then it's non-inclusionary rather than inclusionary. So they say, we're trying to include everybody except people that disagree with us. So, which is just a measure of the insanity. But look, there's been a number of, I've noticed there's been a number of lecturers that have been invited to leave or let go, or been accused of being Nazis and kicked out of legal studies recently. Now that this is coordinated all across the Western world by the globalists. Well, they've upped the ante, so they want only activist lawyers running around. And it's very much the case. If you believe in evidence and due legal process, you believe in facts, you believe in, then you're a Nazi, because that's all white supremacist, colonialist, evil, fascist, Nazi, It's only when none of those things matter, ideology is all that matters, then that's the new form of jurisprudence that's already in a lot of places. A lot of judges are subscribing to that. The globalists have made sure that low IQ kids are getting drafted into the law studies department of universities, and they make sure the lecturers are owned by the globalists and teach radical ideological versions of what the law is. Imagine teaching your students facts don't matter, evidence doesn't matter, that's all white supremacist, Nazi, fascist, Hitler is the only one that believes in facts. Imagine trying to teach people that. Your students have got to be so fucking dumb to accept that as the premise under which the law studies are to take place. It's almost beyond belief. Even as a high school kid, I would have gone, what? No. So now I know a number of judges, in fact quite a few judges and lawyers, not a particularly impressive bunch in my view, but that's just me. Now the lawyers certainly that I've seen, there's a lot of activists in it, but what sort of strikes me as remarkable is that they've accepted this ideological view of the law. Well, Jamal is black and he's been oppressed, and his great grandfather was a slave. So really, he's not really committing crimes. He's really fighting back against injustice imposed on him by the fascist Nazi regime that isn't legitimate anyway. And they want to use facts, because just because he did the murder or did the robbery doesn't mean that he is actually guilty of it directly, because he was made to do it by the evil white fascist Nazis. So really he's not guilty, they are. So we have to let him go, that type of stuff. Now there are a gazillion, lawyers out there that are taught this nonsense. They're not, the idea of looking at facts and so on. Now, facts of white supremacist Nazi fascism. Evidence of white supremacist Nazi fascism. Looking at the case on its merits based on the facts, Hitler. So that they come out with these perverted views. Now, anybody with an IQ of above 100 probably wouldn't succumb to that. So it is very much a requirement that you have low IQ people, or people that are dependent on. For example, if you get someone that the best job they're ever going to have is being a greeter at Walmart or Kmart or something like that, and you say, well, you can have a $100,000 a year job as a pretend lawyer where you can go and chase Nazis all day, then they would think that was a great job. So because they're going to be paid like 3 times what they could ever make on their own merit. So there's that bribery factor of you go and destabilize your society and go and terrorize your fellow citizens, that sort of thing, and you've got the power to do it, so you can feel all powerful and omnipotent. Will pay you far more than you ever would have got, so you can be like the lowest form of life that now is in charge of others, and then you can inflict your hurt and your vengeance on them, and that'll sort of destabilize society, just like we the globalists wanted. So you got all those factors that are playing into this. But I'll go to a gathering, sort of like it's a cheese and wine sort of gathering, this, and there are a number of top of the town lawyers and judges that are there. One thing that surprised me was nearly every judge, I think every male judge at least I met, was married to a rabid activist woman. How is that even possible? And I'm talking, the social workers, the left-wing activists, the super lefty activists, and I'm thinking, why, and these are judges with a job for life, who are paid, 10 times at least the average wage, and with all sorts of other benefits, and living in the nation's premier postcodes and so on. So how do they end up with these activist wives who insist they're being oppressed? His one, I'm just thinking of one wife now. She's a fucking nervous wreck. I mean, and yet she belongs to all these left-wing societies. She's a rabid activist in her own right. Churns out Marxist, communist sort of utterances by the shitload. If there's a book that's brought her out, a book that comes out of how evil white people are and evil white Christians, and she'll buy it and attends all these little activist sort of gatherings. I mean, it's fucking pathetic. And she's there claiming she's oppressed, so she drives a top of the range, BMW, all paid for by the husband. She's got, again, one of the wealthiest postcodes. She's got she's got like her own sort of apartment, if you like, within the house where she gets. She has all these leftist meetings where all these sort of lefty activist communists meet and say how evil white people are and how oppressed black people are. So she's a radical activist, and she's constantly she's looking at the cases that her husband, the judge, is working on, and tries to get in his ear and say, "Oh, you have to do this." One case she was looking at a priest who was wrongly accused of being a pedophile, and it was proven he was proven innocent, by the way. And I was over there one day and a group of people talking to her, and she said, "Well, it doesn't matter that he's innocent. It doesn't matter that he didn't do it. He's part of the white Christian oppressor class, and so he's ideologically guilty anyway of something. It doesn't matter what. And if he didn't do that, the pedophile stuff, who cares? He's still ideologically a bad guy, thus ideologically guilty, thus should be, and so he should suffer the penalties. He should be put in prison, and this for his ideological." What? You've got to be kidding. So, and again, if I jump all over it, she'll clam up. So I don't want to do that. And so I thought, he's committed no crime, and you accept that. But you say it doesn't matter. He should be imprisoned anyway for ideological reasons. I mean, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but he's a bad guy ideologically. Who cares about the facts? Now she's living with the judge, and now another judge. He's got this radical activist, pink and green, blue dyed hair. Woman in her 60s, by the way, who thinks she's 19 and still thinks she's waving, ban the bomb type placards in the street. And she's saying, well, fairness in litigation is the issue here. So again, it doesn't matter if the straight white male did it or not. It's fair if you give the decision to litigant, the black person. If a guy's in legal contest with a woman, the woman must win for ideological reasons because it's equity, it's fairness, and so on. If a white person's in legal contest with the black person must win. If the straight person's in contest with legal contest with the trans or the lesbian or something like that, then the lesbian has to win or the trans person has to win because that's fairness. It's ideological fairness, and she's 100% of this view. And in her position is that no matter how badly treated or unreasonably treated or illegally treated a white, the straight white Christian male is, it doesn't matter because ideologically they're still guilty in the overall miasma of things, and therefore they should have to suffer those penalties. Now, I've got to concede if all the facts, every single available fact and piece of evidence points to the innocence of the white person, everything, and that the black, for example, the black person is lying and this, that, and the next thing, is that acceptable for a decision of a judicial decision in favour of the white person? So she stops, ponders it for a minute, rocks her head back and forth. Well, yeah, I guess maybe, but it has to be like 110% in favour of the white person before it's fair that they. So her idea of fairness is seen in the wider view of ideology, race, gender, hustling, transgender, and she's on the bandwagon with all the latest fads of trans this and so that, and men saying they're women, and and so on. So she's on board with all that sort of stuff. And again, she's the one. I mean, how would a judge who's meant to dispense with the law impartially in this, how would a judge end up with a woman like that? I mean, it's just insane. And one who's in his ear all the time about, you have to make this decision because it's fair and it's equity. Now, the judge himself was displayed what I thought was, particular sympathies to left-wing issues. And I remember a lot of these judges, people who went lawyers and then became judges, a lot of these people got into the law as a form of compensation against what they perceived was being bullied as children, when they're at school and so on. One of the judges, who seems like quite a sweet, sort of pleasant type guy. I mean, he's got a great generosity of spirit, as far as I can determine, at least, and a certain kindness there, and a very charitable type sort of take on things, and I quite like the guy actually, but I imagine he was horribly bullied when he was a kid, and so part of his thing about getting into the law, and others too, is, well, I'll become a lawyer and then people won't fuck with me. They may push me around when I was a kid, but yeah, I'll be a lawyer and I'll fucking get, I'll make them pay. I'll make them pay for what they did to me. And so there's this vengeance thing. And there was a case where one of these judges was, I knew the guy, I know the judge, and he had a case where he had a severe bullying sort of issue that led to, other dramas and had unfortunate consequences. The extent of the bullying, I don't know of it, but he heard the case. Now, I don't know how he ended up with that case. If I was him and the judge, I would have said, no, I can't hear this case. I can't be impartial because it's going to bring harm all the bullying that I suffered as a child, in the judge's mind. So he should have passed the case on to someone else. But I don't know, because so many of the judges, certainly that I've met, I believe were bullied a lot as children, and the gay ones in particular, but other ones, they're very mild-mannered or maybe small in stature, and they are living out their revenge fantasies in some of these court cases they hear. So this he hears this case of the bullying and gives a very harsh, to the maximum extent of the law, gives this very harsh sentencing against the so-called bully. Now, I think the bullying did take place. I think the witnesses, from what I understand at least, were credible, all that sort of stuff. But the guy could have got, the judge's discretion was the guy could have got 6-month weekend detention. The maximum sentence was 2.5 years full-time detention. This guy got the 2.5 years. So I would think the revenge fantasies were being played out in that courtroom there. And so a lot of these people come from these, what they would see, the oppressed, so they would see the straight white male bullies as being, they're in control of society. It would have appeared so when they were children at school and nobody was stopping them or properly stopping them. So now here's their big chance to re-engineer society. So those bullies that bullied them when they were children no longer can push people around. So you can see that would have come into play. In terms of the women who are judges, and there's an increasing number of women, but for affirmative action reasons, increasing number of women, they just behave like in my view, behave like snot-nosed girlies. I don't think they should be. I don't think should be anywhere near a courtroom or whatever. And again, I've met quite a few. And one woman, she wasn't even 5 foot tall and very slender and very very frail looking. And she was a judge, and she liked the idea that these big hairy men, she could just put them in prison with the stroke of a pen. She really got off on it. And as far as she was concerned, the court case, where there were men involved, it was a battle of wits between her and them. This was a fight to the death. She was there to make sure those motherfucking Nazis were held to account. Nazis were held to account. That was her sort of, she came into court with that view. So she was there to slap these men down. These men may think that they run the world, but they don't. I do. Little 4 foot 11 inch tall, skinny little me. I now have the power, and I'm going to play out my revenge fantasies on these men. So a lot of the wrong people, I think, end up as, in my view at least, end up as judges. Now, as I'm going around this cheese and wine night, I can't find a single judge, or for that matter, senior lawyer, that believes the evidence and the facts matter, and that to be prejudiced towards somebody because they're a straight white male is completely unacceptable in the impartial dispensing of the law. That they're just not. I think if two straight white males were in contest, then the facts may matter. But wherever ideology can be woven into the fabric of the court case and how the evidence is to be handled, it is and will be and must be, and they're quite dedicated to it. And just to illustrate this, there's a lawyers magazine, and an advert. There was an advert there for this is a guy going through divorce courts. Okay, he's saying, I'm facing terrible prejudice. I'm really up against it here in the divorce courts. I need help. Would lawyers who want to help please come forward? The guy got 2 or 3 calls, all from lawyers demanding full fees, not cheap lawyers either. Now the same advert was put out saying that it's a woman and the woman's up against it in the divorce courts. It's finding difficult. I need help. And the phone went hysterical. There was like a gazillion lawyers, activists, every activist, NGO, everyone you can imagine. Anyone had a fucking phone was calling up and saying, offering support, pro bono support to this woman. Not free, whatever you want, well, it's done. And yet there's none for them. And that does show you that already the prejudicial nature of the delivery of legal services. If the woman got 100 calls offering help, the man should have got somewhere in that. People should be concerned about the complete objectivity and impartiality of justice, but they're not, and it's nowhere to be seen. And I would argue it's getting worse. So the concern is that the judges are doing this. The judges have this attitude. I only found one judge in that particular cheese and wine night. I only found one judge that mentioned the word that, no, you can't do that because that would be prejudiced against the litigants or against a litigant. Only one mentioned that. The rest didn't seem to give a flying fuck. Now, they don't want to be overturned by appeal courts, but the people that have the resources to get things overturned in an appeal court are very, very few. So the chances are, once you make a decision, no matter how bad it is, it won't get appealed because people don't have the money to do it. So I came away with a view of I was deeply distressed by state of law in Australia in this case, but it could be anywhere in the West. I see the same things happening everywhere: Britain, the United States, Canada, and so on. So this idea of injecting activism into law just happens. It so happens, and this is premeditated, that it will suit the globalist project of causing a complete breakdown in Western jurisprudence and everybody losing faith in any and all systems and so on, which create that sort of societal collapse that the globalists want in order to fully impose their ideology in all in every way conceivable on Western society. So it's all part of the undermining, destruction and dislocation process they're inflicting on us. And they're doing this again through the legal schools and legal studies. So when I talk about, there were some like intern type students at this season, so I started chatting to them, and we're not talking high-powered intellects here, by the way. One thing I admire when I was younger, one thing I admire about lawyers is for the most part anyway, how sharp they were. Not anymore. Oh, fuck. His kids coming through, quite the opposite. And but anyway, we're talking about like the Inquisition, and they didn't know what it was. So the Inquisition was like a sort of religious court where they, and for those who don't know, this was Spanish, like during the 14 and 1500s, even going further than that. But it's where the court could arbitrarily, based on a witness allegedly coming forward, could say, well, you're in league with the devil, or you're consorting with the devil's henchmen. And we say that because you didn't go to church last Sunday. And because of that, we say, therefore, you're a confederate of the devil, and therefore you did the devil's work. Therefore, you have to be taken out back and shot. But we'll have a pretend kangaroo court, bullshit court thing, and you have to prove that you're not a confederate of the devil, and we're allowed to torture the crap out of you until you die in order to determine your guilt or innocence. So it was the bar for dragging you into court and accusing you of being a buddy of the devil. The bar was set very, very low. Whereas to prove your innocence, the bar was set very high and the burden of proof was reversed. Now, that was one of the great, and there have been others, but it's one of the great travesties of justice in history. Now, they said, well, we're allowed to do this. We're allowed this because we're fighting the devil. We're allowed to do it. The devil. We're fighting back against the devil. So we're allowed to do it. We can do whatever we want. The devil will take over if we don't do it. Now, it's the same argument used today. In turning the legal system upside down. But we're fighting Nazis everywhere. The devil's everywhere, Nazis. It's the same sort of thing. And again, to accuse someone of being a Nazi or white supremacist or far right or whatever the term they use, the bar is set very, very low, whereas to defend yourself, the bar is set very high. Look at Donald Trump at the moment, the way they're going after him. They're pursuing him with the lowest of the lowest low bar evidence to go after him, but putting upon him, they're reversing the burden of proof and saying that he must meet a very, very high bar of evidence to repudiate it. So in spite of 400 years of generally improving and getting better jurisprudence and practice of law, we've now started to slip back into the medieval era where arbitrary accusations and so on. But we're allowed to do this. We're fighting Hitler. Means that the standard of jurisprudence is going downhill at a rate of knots, and this is a great tragedy. But no one's opposing it, no one's fighting this or standing up against it. Any of the voices, such as mine, that are doing this are drowned out quite easily or shadow banned or whatever. But until we restore fully impartial jurisprudence and practice of law across the West, we cannot defend the West, and we cannot oppose globalization as long as they're allowed to do this. And they're doing it without opposition, and it's a great tragedy. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Excuse me, and thank you for listening.